This is the British Empire at its peak. Clearly an unparalleled level of dominance with territory that spanned all four corners of the globe for almost 400 years. At its peak, the British Empire encompassed nearly 1/4 of the world's landmass. And this is what's left of that empire, a meager collection of 14 overseas territories, unrecognizable from the peak of British hegemony. And while it's obviously true that the British Empire is over, especially compared to what it once was, these tiny little pieces of land they hold onto actually have a lot more value than you may think. Just like how the US uses their overseas territories, the UK benefits from the remnants of their empire. These islands offer everything from important scientific research facilities to integral parts of European trade dynamics, and of course, strategic advantages. The latter is becoming increasingly important as the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, and the West more broadly, is adapting to the multipolar geopolitical landscape. Every one of these territories provides its own advantages. In Europe, the UK retains Gibraltar, along with Akrotiri and Dhekelia of Cyprus. In the Caribbean, they have plenty of remaining territories, including Bermuda, Anguilla, Montserrat, the Cayman Islands, the British Virgin Islands, and Turks and Caicos. Moving to the South Atlantic, they have St. Helena, Ascension and Tristan da Cunha, South Georgia, and the South Sandwich Islands, and most controversially, the Falkland Islands. In the Antarctic, they have a territory that may become increasingly important, not just for scientific research, but for strategic purposes: the British Antarctic Territory. In the Indian Ocean, an area they once patrolled with complete control, they still have a small territory of 23 miles squared, known as the British Indian Ocean Territory, which contains the Chagos Archipelago. And finally, they maintain a presence in the Pacific Ocean via the Pitcairn Islands. So let's take a look at the remnants of this once vast empire, and see how the colonial history of Britain still pays dividends in the modern landscape for their grand strategy. Before looking at each territory, you should probably know what powers the UK has when it comes to them. For the most part, the UK has unlimited power to legislate for the territories, including issuing orders to local governors to implement policies. Fiscal policies are less of a concern, and liability for territory debts is not an issue for the UK government. So they're mostly off the hook for bailing these islands out of financial trouble, even though they provide aid for some when required. The overseas territories, or we'll say OTs for short, can self-govern on most aspects of social policy, immigration, health, and education through a ministerial system like in the UK. But each inhabited territory has a UK-appointed governor to handle external affairs and internal security like the police. They also have the power to make or reject law. So these territories are self-governed for the most part, and certain territories have more freedom than others. But the mainland has the power to dictate certain policies when they see fit. Where the UK runs the show especially is in the defence and foreign policy domains. For the larger islands, as we'll see in a moment, entire regiments are dedicated to the defence of the territory, and to projecting power throughout their respective parts of the globe. To start, we'll take a look at the Caribbean, where multiple OTs provide Britain with a pretty notable presence. The British Virgin Islands. To most people, this is just the playground of the rich, and well, it kind of is. But what most people fail to remember is that 40 years ago, the British Virgin Islands was more of a self-subsistence and agrarian-style economy, where people had to emigrate in search of work. It then became a tourism economy based on luxury hotels and yachts, and now, according to the UK White Papers, is an economy based on, quote, the provision of financial services to the international business community, aka a tax haven for criminals and the ultra-wealthy. In fact, as of 2023, the British Virgin Isles is actually the leading offshore incorporation jurisdiction, with over 360,000 active companies. In other words, out of all the offshore shell companies plus tax haven territories you can think of, the British Virgin Islands is the most successful. This process of modernizing the economies of their overseas territories has been a policy initiative of the UK government. They now have strong business links with the US and Asia Pacific. A similar scenario has played out in the Cayman Islands, their most populated territory. It went from a primarily maritime economy in the 1960s to the fifth largest financial services center on Earth. It's a wholesale banking mecca, which, unlike retail banking, involves the provision of financial services to large institutions, like other banks. Unsurprisingly, it's now also the world's leading center for hedge funds and enjoys high volumes of business with the US. The same goes for Anguilla, Montserrat, and especially Turks and Caicos, which is consistently ranked as one of the world's best tax havens. acting as the premier jurisdiction for everyone from cash-rich Chinese to Russian oligarchs. I mean, all of these UK OTs in the Caribbean are serving a similar purpose in the global economy. In fact, 8 out of the 10 biggest tax havens on Earth are British territories. The leveraging of high-level financial services has been central to Bermuda's economic development as well. Bermuda has one of the highest per capita incomes in the world. It's also a leading insurance center, the third largest reinsurance center in the world, and the second largest captive insurance center. And outside of the Caribbean territories, Gibraltar also benefits from this sketchy blend of tourism and financial services. With London being recognized as the insurance capital of the world, it's unsurprising that the UK's network of tax havens contains another world-leading insurance center. So the point is that these territories have essentially developed by becoming large financial institutions of their own, with their own tax laws and privacy laws, allowing them to be central to the offshore banking landscape, and therefore integral to the system of international finance. Including all of them, they account for a third of global tax avoidance, while the country in second is the Netherlands, which accounts for 7%, over 4 times less. Naturally, this has put the UK government at the centre of the global tax haven system, and controversy has surrounded numerous members of parliament for the lucrative roles they get with firms in the Caribbean. There have also been a few legislation changes made by the G7 since 2021 to try to curb the corrupt tax evasion at play on these islands. Tax Justice Network reports that the world loses out on $245 billion a year due to multinationals shifting profit into tax havens, and another $182 billion a year due to wealthy individuals using trusts and other schemes for moving assets around to evade tax. Of the $245 billion lost due to corrupt practices by multinationals, a third comes from UK tax havens. And even though there is undoubtedly a lot of corrupt banking practices throughout these territories, it puts the UK in a great position in the sense of tax competition, helping them attract businesses to London to contribute to their own domestic growth and make their economy more dynamic. For a country that is now a declining regional power, the fact that this tax competition is somewhat morally bankrupt is irrelevant. It's essential to the UK economy and will continue to be moving forward. Another key economic benefit of these territories is the natural and environmental resources available. First, in the uninhabited territories, which are the British Indian Ocean Territory, South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands, and the British Antarctic Territory, promoting sustainable ecosystem management and environmental protection are the top priority. This includes the management of fisheries and fishing practices in their surrounding territorial waters. For a former power, the benefits for scientific research are pretty important. The degree of biodiversity in the British Indian Ocean Territory, for example, is one of the highest in the world. And their Arctic territory has been central to the global research into climate change and its mitigation. And while mineral mining in Antarctica is not only illegal and essentially impossible due to the conditions, the territories in the Pacific and South Atlantic have the potential to play an important role for the UK's critical mineral supply chain management going forward. The global demand for certain critical minerals, such as those used for electric vehicles like lithium, graphite, cobalt, and nickel, is projected to increase by anywhere between 6 and 13 times by 2040. In the past few years, we've seen Western governments push to develop policy initiatives for securing supply chains relating to these minerals. The issue is that the procurement of these minerals and the processes involved in curating them for producing modern technologies is really complex, a lot more than it is for other commodities like oil or natural gas. And because global supply chains are more fractured now than any time in recent memory, mainly due to the pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war, ensuring a steady supply of these minerals going forward will be really difficult. As Western economies continue to decouple or de-risk their economies from China's, things will only get more complicated, because China is the leading producer of most of these minerals. The Pacific Ocean is considered to be richer in these mineral deposits, which is difficult for the UK considering their lack of territory there. They do, however, have the Pitcairn Islands, one of the most remote places on Earth, consisting of 4 tiny volcanic islands: Henderson, Eno, Ducie, and Pitcairn itself. Because these islands are so spread out, the exclusive economic zone is pretty big at over 340,000 square miles, or 880,600 square kilometers. Luckily for the UK, deposits of iron, zinc, manganese, silver, copper, and gold have been found within this EEZ. and this may be an area for deep-sea mining once that becomes available over the next decades. Considering all of that, if the UK can continue to strike gold, so to speak, with critical mineral deposits in their own waters, it will be a massive boost for them as we move deeper into the 21st century. The battle between conservation practices aimed at protecting these territories, like what the UK has in place in the British Indian Ocean Territory or their South Atlantic territories, and the pursuit of rare mineral deposits, will no doubt be a controversial issue in the years to come. The last important economic benefits to look at are those provided by Gibraltar, which is set to become even more essential in the post-Brexit space. Of course, Gibraltar has offshore financial services that make it important for the UK, just like the Caribbean tax havens. A reported 60% of online betting in the UK is processed through Gibraltar, which should tell you all you need to know. Gibraltar was only the UK's 51st leading trade partner between March 2021 and March 2022, but over that same period, UK imports from Gibraltar saw an increase of 58.2%. compared with that same period in the previous year. In 2023, it was the UK's 34th leading trade partner, so it's climbing the ladder pretty quick. In the post-Brexit landscape, this trend may continue, and Gibraltar will have a more important role in the UK's imports. Gibraltar also has become an e-gaming hub, which is a little unexpected for anyone not tracking that industry. And they're now a global crypto hub after introducing laws to license and supervise businesses in the blockchain space, earning them the nickname Blockchain Rock, a nod to the island's main tourist attraction. This is a very different role for Gibraltar than prior eras, when it was used for military and maritime purposes because of its strategic location at the mouth of the Mediterranean. It remains one of the UK's permanent joint operating bases for forward mounting of operations in the Mediterranean, North Africa, and the Gulf, spearheaded by the Royal Gibraltar Regiment. It was also used for NATO operations in Libya during the Arab Spring. Historically, the Strait of Gibraltar, which connects the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean, was the vital function of Gibraltar as an overseas territory. You really can't overstate how important this was for the British Empire after its capture at the beginning of the 18th century, because it helped Britain defend their trade routes to the east. It's been referred to as one of the keys that unlocked the world, and even still today, a quarter of global maritime traffic passes through the strait every year. The UK is still tasked by NATO as the primary defender of the strait, and if the geopolitical landscape continues down the path it is today, NATO will prioritize the security of the strait more and more. For now, it's still a crown jewel in the UK's grand strategy, despite it causing consistent diplomatic issues with Spain. And Gibraltar isn't the only strategic gem for the UK in Europe. Akrotiri and Dhekelia, situated on the island of Cyprus, have been essential for the UK armed forces. Those based in what's called the sovereign base areas in Cyprus have provided extensive support for UK operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya, which involved a no-fly zone being implemented in large part due to the Royal Air Force. Situated on the northeastern part of the island, these bases are the pillar of British power projection and defense due to their close proximity to the Suez Canal and the Middle East. These bases in Cyprus were integral to the British involvement in the Iraq War. And since 2014, Operation Schrader, which is the code for the British involvement in the Western intervention in Iraq and the Levant, has seen consistent use of the sovereign bases in particular. Most recently, the sovereign bases, especially RAF Akrotiri, have been used in Operation Prosperity Guardian, which is the initiative created by the Pentagon in late 2023 to protect Western commercial vessels in the southern Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. We can't forget that these bases serve as an intelligence gathering hub for threat monitoring across the Middle East too, and have done so for decades. So when it comes to UK overseas territories, especially because of the current security landscape of the Middle East, none are more important from a strategic point of view than the sovereign bases in Cyprus. Moving from the Mediterranean to the South Atlantic territories, we can look at Ascension Island, St. Helena and Tristan da Cunha, and their role in the UK defence strategy. Tristan da Cunha may not be a huge strategic benefit, but it is an interesting place. It's considered the most remote inhabited archipelago in the world, and the island of Tristan da Cunha is the most remote island in the world. There is no airstrip on the main island. The only way of travelling in and out of Tristan is by ship, and that boat ride is a 6-day trip from South Africa. It doesn't get more remote than that. Ascension Island, on the other hand, was crucial to the UK's success in the Falklands War, functioning as a refueling station and the vital staging point for operations. Apart from having a key RAF base and signal intelligence facilities shared by the US and UK, Ascension hosts one of 4 ground antennas that directly assist in the operation of the famous satellite-based navigation system, the Global Positioning System, or GPS. So, ever since the Victorian era, Ascension has been proving its worth as a territory of huge strategic importance. When you combine the value of these South Atlantic territories with the largest overseas territory in the region, the Falkland Islands, suddenly the South Atlantic looks like a region where the UK has a pretty strong geopolitical foothold. The Falkland Islands are probably the most controversial of Britain's overseas territories, given the recent conflict. Although some people often forget to mention it, the 1982 Falklands War between Argentina and England was not just over the Falkland Islands, but also South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands. Despite being crown colonies since 1841, Argentina has viewed the islands as their own territory, which led them to launching their invasion in 1982. At the time, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher was receiving criticism for the proposed handover of Hong Kong to China, which was being negotiated at the same time as the Falklands War. On top of that, there was raging unemployment as Britain was deindustrializing its economy. The chance to show some military might to the world and stir up some much-needed nationalism made the decision easier for Thatcher. Today, the Falklands are a fishing economy, and they offer some strategic benefit, mainly as a reminder of the UK's remaining power, which is as good of a deterrence mechanism as any. It may seem crazy given the financial benefits we explained for the territories earlier, but the main benefit here for the UK is strategic positioning. As the balance of power in various regions of the world is shifting at lightning-quick speeds compared to the previous 30 years, the more territories you have in diverse parts of the world, the more capability you have to project power across those regions. It's honestly that simple. Why do you think the US has over 800 military bases scattered across the Earth? It's not because they're friendly, and despite what many say, it also doesn't have an awful lot to do with protecting liberal democracy and upholding the liberal international order. Those are of course part of it, but they are elements of a larger strategy for the US, one originally based on policing global trade after World War II, and now based on containing other great powers like China and Russia. The US, as a great power, uses its territories in the Pacific and its bases in South Korea and Japan for deterrence purposes to keep China at bay. The UK on a much smaller scale does the same. In fact, this US grand strategy is so all-encompassing, the UK is basically just part and parcel of it. For example, in the British Indian Ocean Territory, where the main goal is apparently to protect marine life and biodiversity, the UK hosts a US base at Diego Garcia, which facilitates them and their allies' operations across the Middle East and South Asia. That's the whole point of it at the end of the day, using these territories for strategic advantage, even the ones explicitly understood as being used for environmental conservation and research. At the end of the day, the UK may not be an empire anymore, but thanks to these overseas territories, they still have strategic advantages which will help them remain important players in the game. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.